There are nights when a room shifts before anyone notices it has moved. We remember this one because the change began with laughter, not anger. Elena Pierce was not the loudest person at that table. She was the one people assumed would stay quiet. That assumption mattered more than anyone realized. This is how she tells it. My mother lifted her wine glass before dessert even made it to the table. "To family," Marianne said, smiling wide enough for the neighbors across the cul-de-sac to see through the windows. "And to Caleb, for finally buying a real home. 4 bedrooms, fixed-rate mortgage, no shortcuts." Everyone clinked glasses. My brother Caleb nodded like he'd rehearsed humility. Mom's eyes slid to me, and to Elena. She added lightly, "You'll get there one day, sweetheart. Maybe not a place like your brother's, but something." A few cousins laughed. My father, Thomas, cleared his throat and focused on his plate. Caleb leaned toward me in the hallway a few minutes later while everyone lined up for ham. "She doesn't mean it the way it sounds," he muttered. "You know that." "She means it exactly the way it sounds." He shrugged. "You've always been independent. That's different." Different meant alone. Different meant no help. Back at the table, Mom started again. "Some people just aren't wired for ownership," she said, slicing pie. "It takes discipline." I looked at her. "You're right." "It does." Caleb smirked. "Come on, Elena. No one's attacking you." I didn't say they were. There it was. That small crack in the air. The part where the story could have ended if I'd defended myself. Instead, I set my fork down. "Caleb," I said calmly, "you and Mom should come by Saturday, 2 o'clock. I just moved." My mother blinked. "Moved to where I'll text you the address." She laughed again. "Please tell me it's not another rental. It's not—" The silence after that was clean and sharp, the kind that makes people reach for their glasses. From the corner of the dining room, we could see what Elena could already feel the shift had begun. I stood, kissed my father's cheek, and grabbed my coat. "Don't be dramatic." Mom called after me. "I'm not." I replied, "I'm hosting." On the drive home, my hands were steady on the steering wheel. They hadn't always been. Saturday was 5 days away. And for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing myself. I did not sleep much after Easter. It was not because of what Mom said. That part was as predictable as the tides. It was the look Caleb gave me when I invited them over. Confused, slightly annoyed, like I had stepped off the stage and broken the script he had been reading for years. Tuesday night, I was at my kitchen counter going through email when my phone lit up. Victor, my uncle, does not call casually. He texts links to old articles and forgets birthdays. I answered on the second ring. "Elena." His voice sounded tight, stripped of its usual dry wit. "Hey, Uncle Vic, everything okay?" A pause. I could hear the dry crinkle of paper shifting on his end. I have been holding something for years. I thought it was not my place to interfere, but after what I heard about the dinner on Sunday, he exhaled, a long, weary sound. "You need to know the math." "Elena," my stomach went cold. "Know what?" "The custodial account your grandmother opened for you. The one they told you vanished during the recession." I leaned against the granite counter, my knuckles turning white. "What about it?" "It did not disappear in a market downturn. It was liquidated." Victor said, "All of it. $142,700. Withdrawn exactly 14 days before Caleb's down payment cleared on his first property." The room went quiet in a way that felt physical, like the oxygen had been sucked out of the vents. That account was governed under the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act. Victor continued, his tone turning clinical. "By law, those funds belonged to you the moment you turned 18, but your mother had herself listed as the sole custodian. She went to the credit union, signed the withdrawal authorization, and moved the money into the joint checking account she shares with your father. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. She told Dad the investments underperformed. He believed her. She showed him a manufactured summary. Victor replied. She had switched the account to paperless billing and changed the primary contact to a private post office box I discovered by accident. Your father never saw an official statement because she made sure there was nothing for the mailman to deliver, and you kept the records, I whispered. I kept copies of the original ledger. Your grandmother asked me to. She did not trust how things were being handled. She started that fund the year you were born with $50 a month from her Social Security check. It grew because she wanted you to have a shield. Elena, not a gift for someone else. What happens if I pursue this criminal exposure? He replied plainly. Breach of fiduciary duty, potential identity theft. At a minimum, full civil liability for the principal plus interest. You have options. Options. The word felt heavy, like a stone in my pocket. I am not calling the police. Vic, I said quietly. I did not think you would, but the truth belongs to you now. After we hung up, I stayed there for a long time. $142,700. It was not just currency. It was time. It was the interest on the loans I had been grinding to pay off for 10 years. I opened my laptop. I did not draft a frantic email. I opened a spreadsheet. If they thought I would never own something like Caleb's house. They were working with old math. Saturday was 5 days away. 2 days after Victor called, I sat in a small office in downtown Bellevue with a woman named Karen Patel. She wore a navy blazer and reading glasses that kept sliding down her nose. No small talk. She skimmed the copies Victor had emailed me. This was a Uniform Transfers to Minors Act account, she said, tapping the statement. The beneficiary was you. Once you reached the age of majority, the funds were legally yours. I never saw a cent. Karen nodded once. The withdrawal occurred when you were 18. That's legally problematic. How problematic? She folded her hands. Conversion of custodial property. Potential civil claim for breach of fiduciary duty. If misrepresentation occurred. Possibly fraud. The words landed heavy. Clean, clinical, and criminal. I asked. She hesitated. Depending on prosecutorial discretion. Identity theft statutes can apply when a custodian diverts funds for personal use. Personal use. That money funded my brother's down payment. Karen studied my face. You have strong documentation. The statute of limitations could be an issue, but the concealment matters. I looked at the signature on the page. Elena Pierce. Perfect cursive. If I filed, I asked quietly, what would happen? There would be depositions, financial discovery, public record. Your family dynamic would change permanently. I almost laughed. It had already changed. Karen slid the documents back toward me. You don't have to decide today. Some clients pursue recovery. Some pursue clarity. Recovery isn't the point. She tilted her head slightly. Then, what as I thought about Easter? About Caleb's fixed-rate mortgage speech? About Mom calling me unwired for ownership? Control, I said finally, of the narrative. Karen gave a small nod. Then you already have more leverage than you think. When I walked out of that office, the sky was gray and low. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Found you a lender who works with renters transitioning to ownership. I stared at it for a second. Then I locked my phone and kept walking. I did not file a single motion. I did not initiate a single confrontation. Instead, I worked. The Monday after I met with Karen, I walked into our Redmond office before 8 o'clock. Coffee in one hand, laptop in the other. My team was already debating endpoint detection updates in the corner of the lab. Morning. Boss. Marcus called from across the room. Client escalation at 9 o'clock. They want you in personally. Of course they do, I replied, dropping my bag under the desk. I pulled up the incident report. It was a health data platform with a multi-state footprint and high liability exposure. It was exactly the kind of high-stakes crisis that made me indispensable to the firm. For the next 12 months, I kept my head down and my metrics flawless. When our company finally announced it was being acquired by a global healthcare conglomerate, the Slack channels exploded, while others whispered about restructuring. I looked at my contract. My phone buzzed with a message from Danielle in finance. "Check your grant summary. Now." I opened the portal, because the acquisition triggered a change in control clause. My restricted stock units had undergone accelerated vesting. The valuation was not just higher than projected, it was transformative. Danielle called 5 minutes later. "Elena, you are sitting on something significant. Because of the double trigger clause, your equity has fully vested. If you liquidate after the 90-day lockup, you will have true financial autonomy." How significant. Danielle. Enough for a 25% down payment on a luxury estate. Maybe more. I sat back, watching Marcus debate firewall architecture 2 desks away, completely unaware that the floor of my life had just shifted upward. "Talk to a fiduciary advisor before you touch a cent," Danielle cautioned. That night, I met with Luis Ortega in a small office overlooking Lake Washington. He spoke in straight lines and respected hard data. "You have immense liquidity," Luis explained, sliding a projection across the table. "If you allocate conservatively, you can put 25% down on a property in the $1,100,000 to $1,200,000 range. You can do this without compromising your retirement trajectory or your emergency fund. 25%, I repeated. It avoids private mortgage insurance and makes your underwriting profile ironclad." He said, "At home, Mom left a voicemail. Caleb refinanced his mortgage at a lower rate. Smart move. Stability matters at your age. Elena, you should look into a studio apartment for sale in Kent." I deleted the message. Over the next 4 months, I toured houses alone. I looked in Issaquah and Newcastle, but one place stayed with me. A home in the highlands above Cougar Mountain. Glass walls, modern cedar siding. It was not showy, but it was permanent. The listing price was $1,180,000. I ran the math 3 times. Luis called after reviewing my final offer. "You are approved for conventional financing. 25% down. Fixed rate." The sellers accepted. Closing day was strangely quiet. The title officer slid the settlement statement toward me. I signed my full name, Elena Marie Pierce, over and over until the ink felt like part of the wood. When they handed me the keys, they were heavier than I expected. I did not text my mother. I did not call my brother. I simply set a date, Saturday at 2 o'clock. I would let them believe whatever version of me made them comfortable until the moment they pulled into my driveway. Caleb called on Thursday night. It was not a text or a casual group message. It was a direct call. "You really moved." His voice carried that nervous, half-hearted laugh he used whenever he felt the ground shifting beneath him. "I did," I replied. "To where Issaquah Highlands." A long silence followed. I could hear the gears turning as he mentally calculated the property values of the east side. "That is not cheap." "Elena? No, it is not." He cleared his throat. I could almost see him pacing his kitchen in Bellevue. "Mom thinks you are renting again. She told Aunt Patrice you found a small lease-to-own deal. She thinks a lot of things." "Caleb." He did not laugh at that. "I was looking through my original mortgage file this week. My broker mentioned that since I am looking to sell in 2 years, I should have a clear record of my initial sourcing of funds." I stayed quiet, waiting for the impact. "I am looking at the deposit summary from 2023, he said finally, his voice dropping an octave. "There is a line item labeled custodial transfer. $142,700. My pulse did not change. I had been expecting this moment for 5 days. "You noticed it just now. I did not question it then," he admitted, the defensiveness creeping in. "Mom told me she and Dad had been setting aside those funds for years. She called it a merit-based gift. I believed her. I know you did." He exhaled slowly. "The account number listed on the wire transfer matches the one Uncle Victor referenced in that old family email thread about Grandma's estate. I did not connect the dots until I saw the bank's internal memo. And now I am connecting them. The line went quiet again. It was not hostile, just heavy with the weight of unearned privilege. Did you know it was mine? Caleb legally mine? No. His answer came fast, perhaps too fast. I swear I did not. I thought it was theirs to give, but you did not ask. A much longer pause followed. No, he said softly. I did not ask. I heard the sound of a glass being set down hard on a counter. You are not filing a lawsuit. Are you? Victor mentioned something about fiduciary duty. That is your first concern. It is not like that. It feels exactly like that. I said, Saturday. He muttered, his voice strained. 2:00. Yes, 2:00. He hung up without saying goodbye. I placed my phone face down on the granite. The crack was not dramatic, no yelling, no accusations. It was just a shift. And once the foundation shifts, the house never sits the same way again. Saturday morning felt strangely ordinary. I wiped down the kitchen island even though it was already clean, poured coffee, let it sit untouched. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of wind against the glass. Cougar Mountain looked gray and steady outside, not dramatic, just there. At 11, Mom texted, "Send the address again. Caleb says it's up near the Highlands. Are you sure I'm sure?" She responded with a laughing emoji. "We'll see." Around 1:30, my dad called. "You settled in?" "Okay." His voice sounded careful. "I did. That's good." A pause. "Your mother's curious." I figured. He hesitated. "Elena, whatever this is, try not to escalate." "I'm not escalating anything." Another silence. Then softer. "All right." By 1:50, I could see Caleb's truck turning onto the street from the upstairs window. He drove slowly, like he wasn't convinced the navigation was right. Mom's SUV followed behind him. They parked in front of the house, engines idling for a second longer than necessary. I watched them step out. Caleb looked up first. His shoulders stiffened almost immediately. He took in the clean lines of the exterior, the glass panels, the slope of the lot. Mom stood frozen beside the passenger door. "This can't be it," she muttered, loud enough for me to hear through the open window. Caleb didn't respond. Dad closed his door quietly and just stared. I walked downstairs and opened the front door before they reached it. "Hi," I said, keeping my tone even. "You found it." Mom blinked, then forced a smile. "You didn't tell us you were house-sitting." "I'm not." Caleb's eyes met mine. No smirk now, no superiority. "Can we come in?" he asked. "Yes," I answered. "Your guests." And for the first time, that word felt deliberate. They walked in as if they expected the house to correct itself once they crossed the threshold. They moved tentatively, as if the floorboards might turn into something smaller, something temporary, or something rented. Mom moved first. Her fingertips trailed over the back of the sofa, the stone fireplace, and the edge of the kitchen island. It was the same way she touched other people's possessions when she was trying to claim them as her own. "This is," her voice thinned to a whisper, "this is really yours. Elena, it is." Caleb stood near the entryway, hands buried deep in his pockets, staring straight through the glass wall toward the valley trees. He looked as if he were trying to suppress an entire lifetime of assumptions and failing. Dad stayed closer to the door, keeping his coat on, looking like a man who was already planning his exit. Mom forced a brittle laugh. "Elena, be serious. How did you afford a place like this on a single salary? I work. I save. I invest. I took the equity payout from my accelerated restricted stock units after the acquisition and used it for a 25% down payment." Her mouth tightened at the word equity, as if it were a language she did not respect. Caleb finally turned, his face pale. You bought this with vested stock, with 100% vested restricted stock units. Yes. Mom's eyes flicked to Dad. Did you know about this? Thomas' dad shook his head quickly. No, I had no idea. Mom's laugh turned sharp. Defensive. Thomas, you never know anything. Stop. Caleb cut in, his voice low and dangerous. Elena, about the closing file. That specific number I told you about on the phone. I nodded once. I know. Mom looked between us, her composure beginning to fray. What are you two talking about? I walked to the small desk by the hallway and pulled out a leather portfolio. I brought it back and set it on the marble island, right between the fruit bowl and the untouched coffee mugs. Mom did not reach for it. Caleb did. He opened it and stopped moving. What is this? Caleb, Mom asked. Her voice rising. Caleb slid the first page out slowly, as if the paper could bite. Pacific Northwest Federal Credit Union, he read, his voice catching in his throat. Uniform transfers to Miners Act custodial account. Beneficiary Elena Marie Pierce. Mom's face changed. It was not panic yet, but a sharp annoyance. That is old news. That is irrelevant. Caleb flipped to the next page. His jaw tightened so hard I could see the bone. Withdrawal authorization. $142,700. Full liquidation. Dad stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he took the page from Caleb. He read in silence, his lips moving once as if he were counting the zeros without meaning to. This is Victor's nonsense, Mom snapped, her voice quick and practiced. He has always been dramatic. He hates me. I slid one finger to the signature line. That is your signature. Mom. Dated 14 days before Caleb's down payment cleared. Mom glanced down, then back up. I was the custodian. I had the legal authority. Authority for my education, I said evenly. That was the legal mandate of the account. It was family money. Mom's shoulders stiffened. It was mine. I replied. Caleb's face went ghost white. You told me you and Dad saved that money. You told me you matched my savings through years of sacrifice. You said I earned it. Mom pointed at him, her finger trembling. You needed a house. You were getting married. Elena was always fine on her own, and Elena was what disposable Caleb's voice dropped to a whisper. Dad's hands shook as he held the paper. Mary Ann, you told me the account underperformed. You showed me a manufactured summary on your laptop. You never asked to see the actual login Mom countered. Dad stared at her, the betrayal finally sinking in. You controlled every password, every account, every time I asked. You told me you would handle the paperwork and that I should focus on my work. Mom's mouth opened and closed. That is not fair, she said, her voice thinning. Caleb set the documents down with both hands. His eyes were wet. I did not ask, he admitted quietly. I did not want to know. I liked believing it was a clean start. Mom tried to laugh again. It did not land. You are both being so dramatic. I opened the portfolio to the final section and pulled out a sealed white envelope. My name was written on it in a careful, elegant cursive. Dad's face shifted the moment he saw it. Is that your grandmother's handwriting? It is. Mom's head snapped up. Where did you get that Victor kept it? He said Grandma Margaret wrote it for me to open when I turned 18. He said you withheld it. Mom stepped forward, her hand outstretched. That is a private family matter. It was addressed to me, I said, and my voice stayed calm even though my heart was racing. Not to you. I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The paper was old enough to feel soft at the creases. I read the first line out loud. Elena, if you are reading this, it means you are stepping into your own life. Mom went completely still. I kept going, slower this time. This money is not a gift. It is protection. You should never have to depend on anyone who diminishes you. Caleb covered his mouth with his hand and turned away. Dad sat down heavily at the kitchen table, his knees finally giving out. Mom did not speak. Not a single word. She just stood there, staring at the letter like it was a mirror she could no longer control. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. I walked to the door and opened it. Uncle Victor stood on the porch, holding a manila envelope, his shoulders hunched against the Pacific Northwest cold. He looked past me into the silent house, then back at my face. "I came as soon as Caleb called me this morning," Victor said quietly. "I figured the paper would matter more if I were here to testify that I watched her sign the liquidation form. Nobody yelled after that. That's what surprised me." Victor laid the additional documents on the island. Official account statements, transaction history, the full trail, clean, verifiable. Mom didn't touch them. Dad leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling like it might give him instructions. Caleb stood by the window, hands on his hips, breathing through his nose. "This isn't how I wanted this to come out," Mom finally muttered. Victor didn't raise his voice. "It's how it happened." She shot him a look. "You've always resented me. I resented watching you do that." He replied evenly. Caleb turned slowly. "You let me believe that was your sacrifice. For 5 years. Mom, I told people you matched my savings. I bragged about it." Her chin lifted, automatic defense. "I was protecting the family." Dad looked at her then. Really looked at her. "From what?" he asked quietly. The truth that landed harder than anything else. Mom blinked rapidly, like she was trying to refocus the room. "Elena was always independent," she said. "She didn't need it the way Caleb did. I kept my voice steady. You didn't ask what I needed." The air felt thin, but not explosive. Just drained. Caleb crossed the kitchen slowly and stopped in front of me. "I'm sorry," he said, barely above a whisper. "I didn't look too closely. I didn't want to. I know." He swallowed. "Todd told me last year that Mom's version of things always benefits someone. I just didn't realize I was that someone." Dad stood up after that. His hands were still shaking. "I should have checked," he admitted. "She handled all the logins. I let her. It was easier." Mom turned toward him sharply. "You're blaming me now. I'm blaming myself too." He replied, "I chose not to see." No one spoke for a long minute. Then Mom reached for her purse. "I'm not staying for this," she said stiffly. She walked toward the door without looking at any of us. Dad hesitated, then followed. Not close beside her. A few steps behind. Victor stayed. Caleb did too. After the front door closed, the house felt different, quieter, but not tense. Caleb rubbed his face with both hands. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "You don't have to do anything tonight." He looked around the room again, slower this time, less defensive. "You built all this without that money." "Yes." He nodded once, absorbing it. Victor picked up his coat. "She made a choice," he said calmly. "Now you all get to make yours." Caleb left a few minutes later. No jokes, no sarcasm. Just a quiet, "I'll call you." When the driveway emptied, I locked the door and leaned my forehead against it for a second. The house didn't feel like a statement anymore. It just felt like mine. Thanksgiving came quieter than I expected. Caleb and I had met for coffee twice since that Saturday. Nothing dramatic, just long pauses and small, honest sentences. "I'm refinancing without touching Mom's accounts," he told me once, staring at his cup. "I want my name clean." "That's fair." Dad started coming by on Sundays. He'd show up with a toolbox, even when nothing needed fixing. Deck railing looked loose. He said the first time, it wasn't. He nodded. "Still, I'll check." We didn't talk much about the money. He talked more about passwords now. about how he'd let Mom manage everything for 36 years because it was easier to let someone else steer. I confused peace with silence. He admitted one afternoon, tightening a bolt that didn't need tightening. Mom didn't call for 2 weeks. Then, one night, my phone buzzed. "I'd like to come by," she said. No performance in her voice. Just flat. "If that's all right?" I let the silence stretch a second longer than necessary. Sunday, 3. She arrived alone. No lavender cardigan, no pearl earrings, just jeans and a coat that looked older than I remembered. She stepped inside slowly. "This is very solid," she murmured. "It is." We sat at the kitchen island. No folder this time. No documents between us. "I made choices that weren't mine to make," she said finally, staring at her hands. I thought I was protecting something. Status, stability. I don't know anymore. I watched her for a long moment. "I'm not filing anything," I told her. "I'm not asking for repayment." Her shoulders sagged slightly. "But if you come into my life now, you come as a guest, not as the narrator." She nodded once. "I understand." I reached into the drawer beside me and took out a small brass key. "This opens the side entrance," I explained. "Guest room. It doesn't open my office. It doesn't open my safe." She held it carefully, like it might burn. "Thank you," she said quietly. After she left, I stood by the window for a while. The trees were still. The house felt calm, not triumphant, just steady, for most of my life. I waited for permission to feel accomplished. I waited for someone else to validate it, to say it counted. Owning this house didn't change that overnight. What changed was simpler. Elena Pierce stopped waiting, not for approval, not for apology, not for the version of her mother that might never exist. She started choosing who had access. That shift was quieter than any confrontation, but it settled deeper. If this story stays with you, you can follow along. There are others like it. We'll be here, and Elena will keep the key where she decides it belongs.